Okay, now that happened, hey there guys, how are you? Welcome back to a brand new movie review, and today we're talking about Aquaman, and it's weird to even be talking about a live-action Aquaman movie. Who would have ever thought 5 years ago that we would see this? It's a weird time to be alive, isn't it? Aquaman stars Jason Momoa, who's heir to the underwater kingdom of Atlantis. He rides laser sharks, hangs out with Amber Heard, and goes to sleep inside of a whale's mouth. That's all true. Now let's talk about this movie, and hear me out just for 1 second before you get triggered. This movie is completely over the top, it's cheesy, it's corny, and it's also a bloated mess at times. But with all that said, I was entertained by Aquaman. The movie has laser sharks! Ah! And if that doesn't sound like a good time, I don't know what does. The film also reminded me of a few other campy, bloated films that came out years ago, such as Van Helsing, which came out in 2004, which bombed at the box office, and no one went to go see it, but for some odd reason, I've always loved Van Helsing. It's sort of a guilty pleasure of mine. And as much as I really enjoy Van Helsing, and I watch it probably once every year, I own it on Blu-ray, and every time it's on Netflix, I find myself watching it at 3 o'clock in the morning, I still think it's a piece of shit movie, but it's such an entertaining piece of shit film. And back to Aquaman, I will say it's a much better film than Van Helsing in so many ways, but it does share some of those similar over-the-top vibes, in my opinion. This movie's directed by James Wan, who knows what he's doing behind the camera. He directed Saw, he directed The Conjuring, and he directed Fast and Furious 7, which I would say this newest Aquaman film is very reminiscent to his action style of directing that he did in Fast and Furious. Aquaman almost feels like Fast and Furious underwater with more sharks, less Vin Diesel, not as many cars, but the cars are replaced with squids and laser sharks and a crab. A very awesome crab scene, which I want to talk about right now. Now, the thing I like most about Aquaman is this film just goes for it. They didn't hold anything back, and there's a death scene in this film that doesn't matter. This is not a spoiler. It's just some random character that shows up during a battle scene, and it's a giant crab guy. And he has an epic death scene, which affects nothing in the movie, but the way he dies was one of the most phenomenal theater experiences I've ever had in my life. I'm watching the movie, and my friend Chris Stuckman's right beside me, and this crab, as he's dying, says, "You'll never take me alive!" And we just look at each other, and we start laughing like little girls, and it was... And from a critical standpoint, it's dumb, it's stupid, it's completely over the top and unnecessary, but it's so entertaining, and that's the great thing about this film. It knew what it wanted to be. It didn't take itself too serious. It wasn't trying to be the Dark Knight in the Atlantic Ocean. But as far as the tone of this film goes, I don't think anyone can ever make the complaint that this film did not go light enough. Any lighter, and this film would have been an animated Saturday cartoon.
Oh, no use. These rocks are wedged tighter than a giant clam.
So as far as DC being too dark, not anymore. And I would say Aquaman is sort of like DC's version of Thor Ragnarok. It's very similar in so many ways. Now let's talk about Jason Momoa as Aquaman. This dude is buff. I'm jealous. I've been jealous of this guy ever since he got to hook up with Daenerys Targaryen in that tent. And years ago, when Zack Snyder originally cast Jason Momoa as Aquaman, he doesn't look like the first choice to play the character. I mean, sure, he looks like a superhero already. He was a barbarian at one time, but he doesn't really look like the typical Aquaman character, and I like the switch up. I've always stood by that. I like that they went a different route, and they sort of tried to make Aquaman as cool as they possibly could. And Jason Momoa is a huge buff dude. You can envision him being a superhero, punching sharks in the face, or at least I do when I close my eyes. But there's also some very heartfelt moments throughout the movie. There's one scene where he's having a drink with his dad at this bar, and they're talking about their past, and you sort of like Jason Momoa. There's a character side, there's a personal side. You get that human side, not just the Atlantean side. And then he starts taking selfies with a biker gang randomly, and, well, that's sort of the over-the-top of the movie. It just goes for it whenever it wants. Now let's talk about the villains of the film. The first one's played by Patrick Wilson, who plays King Orm, or Seamaster. Yes, call me Seamaster. He says that 25 times throughout the movie. And he's pretty much the most cliche, typical bad guy who does bad things for the sake of being the bad guy of the movie to help carry the plot along, so Aquaman has someone to punch. Now let's talk about the sub-villain of the movie, and that's Black Manta. And first of all, Good job, Aquaman, for making a villain look exactly how he does in the comic books. Black Manta looks awesome. He looks exactly how he should. And for the most part, I really liked the character of Black Manta in this film. He is a very humanized sub-villain of the movie who shows up and uses technology, and his character is this mercenary slash pirate. And he does have some character motivation, which is presented early on in the movie, so you understand why he wants to kill Aquaman as much as he does. And the other thing I appreciated about the character of Black Manta was he gives the character of Aquaman an arc in the movie. He actually makes his character change and realize something, and that was nice. He wasn't just tacked in there for no reason. He actually had a reason for being in the movie. And speaking of Black Manta, this is no spoiler. It's some random scene in the movie that just happens randomly. There's a scene where Black Manta gets his new costume and he's spray painting it and putting it together. But the scene just randomly starts. It's playing like dubstep 80s music. It lasts for 60 seconds and just ends, and then we go to somewhere else. It completely felt like just some scene tacked in the movie just for the sake of being there. But yeah, it definitely has like a 1980s vibe at times. Now, here are my final flicking thoughts on the film Aquaman. The biggest praise I can give this movie is the visual effects are fun to look at, the underwater battle scenes are fun, there's armies riding sharks, there's a crab guy who dies the most epic way he possibly can, which is over the top, really stupid, but it made me laugh. And I think that's the vibe this movie was going for. Over the top, blockbuster schlock, where you can just have fun and it knows what it wants to be. And also, Aquaman gets his suit. They make Aquaman look like Aquaman in this movie. He's holding a trident, and when he steps out of that waterfall, you're like, yeah, that's Aquaman. Good job, movie. Good job. You weren't afraid to do what you had to. And now for my negatives. This movie has tons of them. The pacing is really bad. It's sloppy at times. Some of the editing needed to be tweaked to shorten up scenes. Things randomly happen and then they just disappear and then you go somewhere else. There's also one segment of the film where the characters go to a desert to get some ancient artifact that just happens and blah, 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 but it really slows down the pace of the movie, and it takes 15 or 20 minutes. So Aquaman's over the top, it's a little bit sloppy at times, but it's entertaining and it's fun, and it's a crowd-pleasing movie. It's one of those movies that I would buy on 4K Blu-ray, watch it late at night, eating some popcorn, and just forget about who I am and what I'm doing in life, and it would look awesome on my TV. It would just, all the little colors underwater, it looks like Avatar under the sea. So with all that said, I'm going to give Aquaman, a B-. The movie's a good time. Go check it out in theaters. And by the way, before I go, guys, I wanted to let you know I do have a podcast, which is on my Patreon. I'll put the link down below. It's co-hosted by fellow YouTuber Chris Stuckman. And on the last podcast episode, we talk in depth about the film Aquaman and laser sharks and the crab death scene. It's a good time, and we talk about a whole bunch of other things on the podcast, and I do Q&A videos, vlog videos, so if you want to, check that out, link down below. Now here's my question for you, and let me know this down below in the comments section. What did you think about Aquaman, or what is your favorite movie that takes place in a water environment? If I had to pick one, I would maybe go with Waterworld, which is completely over the top and cheesy, but I'm a guy who likes those things. So as always, guys, thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe. That way, I can see you next time.